Now, let's turn now to something that I know would have been making a lot of you very angry over the summer months. And finally, we're back on air so we can talk about it. And that is the boycott of the Sydney Festival by Palestinian activists. This entire issue started with $20,000 in sponsorship from the Israeli embassy. It was for the Sydney dance company's performance of Decadence. The sponsorship was appropriate because the choreographer was Israel's Ohad Naharin. The ensemble received a standing ovation when it premiered on January 6. As it turns out, Ohad Naharin has been critical himself of the Israeli government. But why should facts get in the way of a good boycott? The boycott, divestment and sanctions movement kicked in, claiming the sponsorship money meant the Sydney Festival was a culturally unsafe environment for artists and festival attendees of Arab background. About 30 performers pulled out of the Sydney Festival. Here are some of the artists who withdrew from performing. And remember these names so you don't support their other endeavours. Radio host and commentator Yumi Steins, former politician Meredith Bergman and Yvette Andrews, ABC comedian Tom Ballard, comedians Tom Walker and Judith Lucy, and the First Nations dance company, Marugeku, which is very disappointing given how the Jewish community has long supported Indigenous Australians. Dozens of other artists withdrew, but apart from the 6 I've just named, I haven't heard of the rest of them, and their profiles are so low, and thanks to less exposure at the Sydney Festival, it looks like they're going to stay low. But this campaign to boycott the Sydney Festival had significant support in the media. The Sydney Morning Herald gave space to a Palestinian activist to air her view that Israel is an apartheid state and a brutal regime. The ABC's flagship Radio National program, just on Thursday, hosted by Hamish McDonald, he asked the Sydney Festival chairman, David Kirk, whether he would resign over the matter. Resign over taking a donation from the Israeli embassy by asking if he was considering his position. Have a listen to this exchange.
And when you saw that, did you think to yourself, this could cause us some problems for a lot of the artists?
No, we didn't. As I said, we've had.
Isn't it? Forgive me, David. But isn't it the responsibility of a board and a board chair to think about those things? And if you're not thinking about them, you're not really doing the job.
Well, the answer is yes to your first question, and then as far as the second question is concerned, I think there's a lot to cover. I'm not trying to hide from the fact that this was a miss. We should have understood. We should have been prepared to debate this much more fully at the time, but we didn't.
Are you considering your position as chair of the board?
No, not at this time. We've got a festival to put on.
Considering your position as chair of the board, you'd think he'd taken a donation from the Taliban, but probably there would have been less fuss on the ABC and at the Sydney Morning Herald if he had taken a donation from the Taliban. And that presenter, Hamish McDonald, both of the ABC and the Project on Channel 10. Unbelievable. And Kirk, to his credit, he hasn't returned the funding, but he was cowering. He actually apologised for how this sponsorship put people in a difficult position.
And we're very sorry about that. That is something we would never have wanted to do, and we never want to see happen again. As I said before, we're very sorry for that, and we would never have wanted that if it had perfect foresight.
Multiple apologies in that interview. But it's not just the media that's supporting this BDS campaign, but the media union as well. The MEAA, that's the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, issued a statement supporting the rights of staff to express solidarity with the BDS movement. And that isn't all. Staff at Carriageworks, which is one of the Sydney Festival venues in Sydney, these staff are now reportedly stopping work and pulling out of shifts. The Boycott Sydney Festival Instagram page posted yesterday that 7 staff at the Sydney Festival venue Carriageworks had given up shifts for the entirety of the festival in solidarity with the Palestinians and against the Sydney Festival's partnership with what they described as the apartheid Israeli regime. They said that dozens of others were wearing badges in protest. And in a statement, the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance expressed support for arts workers being able to express their solidarity without fear of backlash from management. Now, I haven't ever seen the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance expressing support or solidarity for Jewish or Israeli people who may be hurt by this boycott. The Media Alliance that is meant to support all Australians, but apparently not if you're Jewish. The MEAA is so ignorant that it ignores the fact that in the United Arab Emirates, Israeli cultural performers and tourists are welcomed, and this is seen as a way to promote peace and coexistence between people, a point well made in the past week by Dave Sharma. And as musician Nick Cave has said of the BDS, he described the boycott of Israel as cowardly and shameful. He said Israel is a real, vibrant and functioning democracy with Arab members of parliament, and so engaging with Israelis who vote may be more helpful than scaring off artists or shutting down means of engagement. That was Nick Cave. And now the movement is targeting Schwartz Media. That's the publisher of the Saturday paper and the Monthly. It's owned by publisher Maury Schwartz. He's Jewish. There's a push for writers to withdraw from contributing to Schwartz's platforms, and he has several others. Now, the Saturday paper is an extreme left-wing publication. It's been deeply nasty to me personally, deliberately misinterpreting my reporting on Wuhan. So even though they've done nothing to deserve my support, there's no question about it. This is an anti-Semitic attack on a media outlet owned by a Jew. And for people who say these boycotts are nothing to do with Jews, it's nonsense. The entire goal of the BDS movement is for Israel not to even exist. To be clear, their aim is not a two-state solution. They have no place for Israel in their plan at all. It's the demolition of Israel. The BDS movement claims that Jews are also not indigenous to the land of Israel, when the reality is the Jewish people have a 3,000-year connection to the land. So the idea that you can separate this boycotting from the Jewish people, from anti-Semitism, is nonsensical when you look at what the actual aim of the global BDS movement is. And here's something even more disturbing. We've heard from so many voices from the Liberal Party, the National Party, condemning this racist boycott of the Sydney Festival. Dave Sharma, Paul Fletcher, Josh Frydenberg, Ben Franklin, and many others. But in the Labor Party, apart from New South Wales Labor MP Walt Secord, and he belongs to the state parliament in New South Wales, there's barely been a peep from Labor. Which federal Labor figures have you heard condemning the boycott of the Sydney Festival? Any? The BDS campaign is not officially supported by any major political party, but there's been no vocal opposition from anyone in federal Labor. The same party that could, in all likelihood, be in power in just a few months' time. With the federal election in May, likely in May, what confidence do we have that Labor will continue to support the Jewish community, will continue to support Israel when it comes to the United Nations and votes at the UN? I have no confidence. The Labor politicians have given us no reason to be confident that they will not encourage racism and division and anti-Semitism by tacitly supporting the boycott movement. Never mind that Hamas has been supportive of this Sydney Festival boycott, issuing a statement praising those who are participating in the boycott. Hamas, the terror organisation. As Jared Henderson points out, this is the same Hamas that in 2016 executed Palestinian gays for being male homosexuals, reportedly throwing a number from high-rise buildings. As Jared wrote, Hamas is a strange bedfellow for a progressive, supposedly concerned about human rights, like ABC comedian Tom Ballard. And the bigger question we have to look at is, how is it that the Jewish people, one of the most persecuted groups in history, have turned into the oppressors in the eyes of the left, simply for continuing to protect the country of Israel from unrelenting rocket fire and terror attacks from Gaza? BDS has been a well-orchestrated international campaign. It's effectively cancel culture of an entire country. And the tactics we've seen over the past month with the Sydney Festival are not new. They've been tried and tested in other markets, the US and the UK. We thought the anti-Semitism that we watched with horror unfolding overseas was far removed from our society, but it's not.